Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the On the Pony Express podcast. I'm Billy Embody. Got a jam-packed recruiting show for you guys today. Excited to debut this weekly recruiting show that will air on Mondays. We'll do one on this Friday to kick things off, and we've got a good reason for doing it. A lot to talk about around the Mustangs, and we'll break all that down for you guys on this edition of the On the Pony Express podcast, which starts right now.
Remember when your biggest worry was finding parking at Dallas Hall? Now it's protecting your home, your car, maybe even that first business. That's where Northwest Insurance Agency comes in. Exclusive coverage designed by Mustangs for Mustangs who've galloped into the real world. Protect what you've built and move forward with confidence, because once a Mustang, always moving forward.
Northwest Insurance.
This is the On the Pony Express podcast, part of the On3 network. Check out all the SMU coverage you need at ontheponyexpress.com. Now, here's your host, Billy Embody.
1, 2, 3, let me go.
Happy Friday, everyone. Hope you guys have had a great week on now the eve of SMU facing off against Wake Forest, as well as SMU basketball getting going with its exhibition Saturday in Moody Coliseum. We'll have both of those covered for you guys in person at ontheponyexpress.com. Subscribe for just $1 for your first week. But we debut this recruiting show, and of course, we appreciate our friend Mark Villasana, Northwest Insurance Agency, for sponsoring everything we do, 214-352-5656. But big news here, a new sponsor with ontheponyexpress.com is Horn Legend. I'm wearing one of their polos right now. A lot of you guys have probably seen Horn Legend at some of the pop-ups around SMU's campus, on the boulevard, or maybe in the suite areas. Well, guess what? Now they're proud to be a part of the On the Pony Express family, and we're proud to have them. This is a luxury brand for us that we're proud to now help On the Pony Express subscribers get free shipping with, thanks to code PONY. That gives you free shipping on your orders. Make sure you take advantage of that. That is a limited code for now. We don't know how long it'll go for, but we're proud to offer that for you guys. And so make sure you guys take advantage of that. And then when you're checking out online, use the drop down to select On the Pony Express as far as why you heard, why and how you heard about Horn Legend. But let me share a little bit about Horn Legend with you guys. The collections that they have in the college space are just awesome. Really impressed with what they bring to the table. So you can help out your family, your friends, and get the whole lineup there with their college selection. But that SMU selection is just really, really top notch, from polos to pullovers to hoodies to they've got vests on their website, sports shirts. I showed this to Michelle the other night and said, hey, really excited to have Horn Legend with us now. And she sent me about 15 things that I now have to get. So really excited about Horn Legend joining us. We're going to do some fun things with them as well on the All Access AM show that we have. Again, go to their website, hornlegend.com, and check out what they've got going on there. We're really pumped up about this partnership. And they said, hey, we want to sponsor the recruiting show. We want to recruit people to wear Horn Legend like SMU recruits future Mustangs. And sure enough, we got something done, and we're really excited about the sponsorship and partnership with Horn Legend. Again, this is not one of the SMU polos, but this is just one that I got given to me, and really love the feel for it. The collar here I think is just awesome, because sometimes you kind of get in between a little bit on the buttons maybe, but this is just grade A stuff. They do a tremendous job. And of course, they are independently owned and headquartered in Dallas, Texas as well. So proud to have them a part of the On the Pony Express family. They're sponsoring the recruiting show and really taking that on. So pumped up to have them with us at ontheponyexpress.com. With all that said, SMU did some recruiting of its own over the last few months and got its quarterback of the class of 2027. Malachi Zeigler committed to the Mustangs earlier this week. One of the top quarterbacks in the country, a 4-star prospect on the Rivals industry ranking, just outside the top 200 overall, the number 17 quarterback in the country. He's out of Benton, Louisiana, and SMU went and got him from the likes of Baylor, Mississippi State, and others that were really challenging for him. He visited Auburn the other week. I thought I had the audio muted on that, but you get Malachi Zeigler in the boat, and you now have your quarterback of the future in this recruiting class of 2027, which has its hopes really set high to be one of the top classes in the country. SMU sits with a top 25 class nationally. But the thing I like about Malachi Zeigler is he's always been one to compete. I think that stands out first and foremost. He's gone to camps. He's active on the 7-on-7 circuit, and he plays for a high school that plays at the highest level of competition in Louisiana, but they don't always have the talent, and that's no disrespect to them, but I've seen Benton play a couple times over the years, and they just don't have this huge group of prospects that a lot of these schools that you always hear about at the highest level of Louisiana high school football have on their rosters. So they kind of take it on the chin at times in high school play, but Malachi Zeigler is really smooth. He's really polished, and I think he's a great kid. Comes from a great family that really wanted to have this process figured out before his junior year was finished up. So in the spring, when he's out on the 7-on-7 circuit, when he's out taking visits to SMU, he can say, hey, I am the guy in this class of 2027 for SMU. And he already trains in Dallas. He trains with Dak's trainer, actually. So he spends a lot of time here. You got to give credit to De'Ara King, quarterback's coach, for stepping up here, as well as guys like Marshall Levinson in the recruiting department. Rhett Lashlee made it clear, this was their guy. They've recruited others, of course, throughout the cycle, guys like Kavion Bryant and Colton Nussmeyer and others, but really they honed in on Malachi since the spring. Just going back to some of the conversations that I've had with sources, Malachi was their guy that they wanted. He's got really good size at about 6'3", 6'2", 195 pounds, well built. If you see him on Twitter as you're watching his mid-season highlights, so he's played a few more games since these came out. Just, again, really talented football player that understands, I think, the mental side of it well. And then what really sealed things is this summer he came to camp at SMU, and I've seen throughout my career a bunch of guys camp, and I'll talk about this in just a second after we get done with this, but one of the better throwing sessions I've seen in about 10 years covering college camps. I have a couple that were better. Caleb Williams, Garrett Nussmeyer both come to mind at LSU. I saw both of them throw as high school prospects going into their junior seasons. And I think even Garrett might have thrown as a senior as well. Those really, really pop off to me. And this 2027 class in Louisiana, I said this earlier this year and actually kind of last year, the best guy in Louisiana of a class of really talented quarterbacks, including Elijah Haven, who's listed as, for some services, the number one player in the country. I had Malachi Zeigler circled. This was way back when I was still covering LSU and all of that. Peyton Houston is kind of a sawed-off, really talented quarterback and very polished as well. He committed to LSU. He's very good. I don't necessarily love his size just from a limitation perspective. And Elijah Haven's kind of the freaky, multi-sport athlete that, gets all of the buzz. But Malachi Zeigler was the guy that I kind of honed in on from the get-go. And I really need to pull some receipts and grab those. But he was the one that I really circled from the get-go as the top player in Louisiana at the quarterback position. So it's a big decision for SMU to go all in on a Malachi Zeigler. Kavion Bryant was on the board, and they very much liked him, but these are two very different quarterbacks, and SMU got the one that they wanted in this case in Malachi Zeigler. So a big start to the class of 2027 for SMU. This is one of those decisions that we'll look back on now, like Ty Hawkins, and going all in on him and really sit there and look back in 29, 30 and say, okay, SMU either really got this right, or what are they thinking they're going to be going into the transfer portal and looking for more. And that's the hard part about recruiting high school quarterbacks. It's easy to go into the transfer portal and grab the top guy and grab a guy who's played and try to, put your eggs in that basket and say, we're going to just take a experienced player. And there's a lot to that. And there's a lot to be said for doing that. And I'm a big proponent of that. But finding somebody who matches up on the field with talent, with size, with traits, all of those things, and what you need at the quarterback position off the field is a very difficult task to nail. And SMU is hoping that Malachi Zeigler is an evaluation that they nail. And so he is your first commitment in the class of 2027 for SMU. Big deal there. He'd visited Auburn a couple weeks ago. He'd visited a bunch of other places, but really Baylor, Mississippi State were the main challengers. Michigan was a school that recruited him pretty heavily before landing their 2027 quarterback. So a really good pickup here for SMU. And here's the thing. Here's one quote that really stood out to me. And he said they have had some top 25 recruiting classes the last couple of years, which resulted in an ACC championship last year. And, talk about the game appearance. My class would be the first full recruiting class with them being in the ACC. So the 2027 class could possibly jump to a top 10 class, which aligns with the goal of winning a natty. That's the goal for SMU. They want to keep continuing to build on their recruiting classes and improve them. They're a top 25 class right now. The year before that, they built a class that was really in position to be, improving the program and sending it in the right direction. Now they have that goal of being that top 15 type of a class. Of course, Malachi's talking about top 10 and things like that. When you get a quarterback that is as highly rated as Malachi Zeigler, that will help. We'll see, obviously, what the rankings end up saying about him. There's going to be a tough road for him because of the high school he plays on. But when you really watch the film and what he puts out there, I really like it. SMU really likes it. I think for him, he's got a lot of the traits that you want in a quarterback. So big news there for SMU to get Malachi Zeigler on board and committed, and to take him away from some schools like Baylor and Mississippi State that were really on him early is a really nice win for SMU and what they're doing on the recruiting trail. So big news there to kick off the week. Came on Sunday, and just have waited to drop the recruiting pod until everything was all good with Horn Legend, because this is where they wanted to be. So we break out the Horn Legend sponsorship with some big news with Malachi Zeigler committing to SMU. So big news there. And we will be now tracking him and making some trips over to Benton, I'm sure, to watch him play. SMU did go and see him during the week after the bye week, heading into the Syracuse game. That they went and stopped by and saw him play on Thursday, and then he visited that weekend, and that kind of pretty much sealed the deal for this SMU recruiting win. So with that, take a shot to that. Socorro Tequila, our friends, really helping you guys out on your game days as well. I made the Cadillac margarita that's on their website with their añejo just 2 nights ago now. Let me tell you, it was just top notch. Really enjoying trying out different cocktails. I'm a little bit more adventurous when it comes to the cocktail side of things with the different tequilas that Socorro has to offer. And so I've enjoyed it. I'm very much I like to think I can make a really good martini, a really good espresso martini, things like that. But now with our friends at Socorro, I'm breaking out and I'm trying some different cocktails. Cadillac margarita there with the añejo is really, really good. I actually kind of mixed this up a little bit. I did not use the agave nectar. I'm going to next time and see maybe how it changes. I used an agave kind of water that had some ginger as well in it that we had in the fridge, I guess, and it just came out great. So looking forward to toying around with it, but the Cadillac margarita really came out well. So check out our friends at Socorro for your game day. They've got the Blanco. They've got the Añejo Reposado. They're an award-winning tequila company already that was started in 2020. So they're on the rise. And make sure you go to their website to get free shipping on 3 bottles or more. Click the link in our podcast episode description to help us out there. So, again, it's game day on Saturday for SMU as they take on Wake Forest. And one of our followers on Twitter noted that they'll take a shot for every touchdown. That was last week against Clemson. We'll see if they do that again this week with our friends at Socorro. So Shout out to Scoro. As we go into recruiting, this back half of the senior season for a lot of guys is going to be really interesting for SMU's commits. SMU does have a top 25 recruiting class. They do have a group of commitments that I would say are locked in for the most part. You really haven't heard too much about guys wavering. They pretty much had all of these players back on campus for visits during the course of the season, highlighted by, guys like Christian Rhodes, Drew Evers, Evan Goodwin, Algebra Miles, and others. But one that I am watching to see kind of how things unfold is Markel Ford, who actually has really performed well since his return to the field for Mesquite Horn. He did not really get to play much of his senior year at all until about halfway through the season. So SMU is keeping a close eye on him, see how he develops in the back half of the season. He's kind of transferred a couple times trying to get on different teams, and UIL rules, made it so that he was going to be ineligible. So he's back at Horn, and SMU is keeping a close eye on kind of how that all unfolds with him. But we did see some movement in this class as Braylon Edwards, the defensive back from Duncanville, did announce his decommitment. And this is one that I'd kind of, first of all, let's kind of rewind here. I like to think that I keep it pretty straightforward with you guys on recruiting and if I like a kid or not from a just pure talent eval perspective. And then I would say that you have players that I can see the vision for and I might not agree with, or I can understand where they're going with it and what they like. I generally made it pretty well, not pretty well known, but when it comes to Braylon Edwards, I was just I didn't see it at safety for SMU. And that's where SMU had recruited him. And really their top two safeties, you could argue, going into the spring were Braylon Edwards and Donovan Webb from Panther Creek in Frisco. And they won a hard-fought recruiting battle to get Braylon Edwards. They beat out Arkansas, Auburn, a couple other schools that had got him scheduled for official visits. I think he went out west, maybe to Arizona State, maybe Utah. SMU wins the recruiting battle. They're stoked. His senior year probably has not been what SMU has wanted to see. And recruiting Duncanville is a very obviously proud program, and one that you've also got to be very careful as far as how you go about recruiting players. And if you see something that is not trending the way you want it to, you need to say something and you need to make sure everybody's on the same page. Same with South Oak Cliff, same with DeSoto, same with, Cedar Hill, things like that. That's just kind of, and Texas in general, but Dallas schools are really particular about that, especially the talent-rich ones that SMU recruits constantly. They have a bunch of players from Duncanville. They've recruited Duncanville. They are going to, I would be shocked if they didn't get another one or two in the class of 2027. And they have Zach Turner, 2026 tight end, committed on from the Duncanville team as well. So over the course of the season, SMU, kind of had some conversations with Braylon Edwards and let him know that, hey, we are watching. We are not seeing necessarily what we, maybe want to see. And so they've had conversations and let him know. And during that time, Braylon Edwards opts to take some more visits, and SMU is okay with that. And I think this is a natural kind of, SMU didn't cut him, but SMU also said, look, this is going to be a hard road for you to get on the field. We're probably going to bring in a transfer portal safety or two. We've got Tyron Polley come in, all of these things. And Braylon Edwards decommits. And I think both sides are probably getting what not necessarily they want, because Braylon Edwards was just back on campus for the Stanford game. He's been on campus consistently. Braylon Edwards wants to be an SMU Mustang. But right now, SMU, with what they're losing off the safety position, probably can't take Braylon Edwards and do what maybe they had talked about with regards to, whether it be NIL, rev share, all of those things, and also just general playing time. So from what I heard, there was an honest conversation, and, now we see Braylon Edwards decommit. evaluations are ongoing for this coaching staff all the time. And, this is probably one where it makes a lot of sense. And truthfully, from a just evaluation standpoint, I wasn't necessarily sold on Braylon Edwards. I try to take a baseline of one, let's look at the guys on the roster who are performing well. Let me go back and try to see what I thought about players or what I maybe saw in different players that made me high on them. Like I think Tyron Polley, his sky, he's going to be like Ahmad Moses level. Like he's going to be one of the better safeties in the country. He's wired the right way. I think physically he's already shown he's added mass. It sucks he got hurt. He would be playing a good bit right now. He would be the third safety, no doubt in my mind, for SMU to kind of spell Ahmad, spell Isaiah Wacobia, and he'd probably be playing at a pretty high level if he had not gotten hurt. Unfortunately, he did. So when I look at Braylon Edwards and I remember watching Tyron Polley, I remember Braylon Edwards coming up and the coach is saying, hey, this is going to be one of the guys that's going to be recruited pretty highly for the next group. And I just didn't necessarily really see it when looking at a guy like Tyron Polley. I wasn't there. I just, for whatever reason, didn't see it. I don't think the stopwatch piece of it was there for me. I think the size perspective is a little different as well. So Braylon Edwards is going to end up somewhere. He's picked up a few offers, more of the group of 5 variety this fall. He's going to have schools that are going to take his commitment, and he will end up somewhere. And maybe the honesty from SMU with him helps him end up somewhere that he can play and play a lot more. And maybe he ends up back at SMU one day, maybe. But obviously it's a hard conversation. A kid who had been as locked in as anybody, really difficult conversations were had. SMU was not going to cut him. They would have, if he would have pushed back and said, I want to be at SMU Mustang no matter what, SMU would have had to say, okay, we took your commitment, we're going to honor it. But they, generally let him know that the expectation is that it's going to be a tough road to playing. So difficult conversation nowadays. In the past, without NIL, without rev share, I'd probably handle this a little differently and just say, there was a parting of ways, and it was kind of mutual, and SMU let him know that there was better opportunities probably elsewhere for him. But you can dive in a little bit deeper because there's money involved with these guys. Truthfully, and that's the world that college guys ended up wanting to get into, and that's the world we live in now. So I'm a little bit more open about talking about players from an evaluation standpoint, kind of treating them like NFL draft prospects. Like if I won't throw a kid under the bus character wise. I will be very particular about how I word things like that, because usually that's all hearsay. But when it comes to a pure talent evaluation standpoint, I like to give my honest take on things to begin with. But whenever there's a parting of ways and it's a sticky subject and things like that, it's now we're now in a world where you can shoot it a little bit straighter, which I enjoy, because I'm much more of the, if I say, if I'd like to have no dispute as far as, hey, does Billy like this prospect or does he not? And Braylon Edwards is an awesome young man, and has just been so great to us on our end of things. But from a talent evaluation standpoint, he has a lot to work on. And now he has some extra motivation, maybe. So we'll see how it goes. But SMU needs some instant impact safeties. I think they're going to go and get that in the transfer portal. That's going to be the move for Scott Simons. And then Tyron Polley, there are super high expectations for him. Jaden Milner-Jones, I think as he settles back into a position, can kind of get back on track development-wise and be a rotational guy for SMU. But they're going to have to go hard in the transfer portal safety-wise and figure out that position. So we will watch that one very closely. Speaking of watching closely, guys, feel free to watch what Manny's Tex-Mex has going on across their 4 locations in DFW. Get 10% off your food when you say queso to your server. Again, just say, hey, I'm supposed to get 10% off with the words queso. Check with the manager, whatever you need to say, they will do it. It just sometimes takes a second. So because they don't hear it often, they hear it from our On the Pony Express subscribers though and listeners. So make sure you head into Manny's Tex-Mex and the rest of October. Remember, get the Komen Rita, and that will donate $1 to Susan G. Komen for every single Komen Rita sold. We appreciate Manny's for their support. And make sure you get by there and say queso for 10% off and grab a Komen Rita benefiting the Susan G. Komen Breast Cancer Foundation for the rest of October. So great cause there. And you can start off your Saturday at Manny's, whether it be Lakewood, Coit location, Saxy, Rockwall. Start it off. You can get there, have a little brunch, and then be back on the couch for that 11 a.m. kickoff against Wake Forest. They'll also broadcast the game if you put it on. So do that, and they've got a great patio at all their locations as well. So shout out Manny's. Let's wrap up with this on recruiting. As far as where SMU is at with the 2026 class, this is a good kind of final bit to reset things. Next week we'll talk about, on Monday we'll break down the class of 2027 and kind of where that could go. We'll do offensive breakdown, defensive breakdown. We'll kind of lead up to the Miami game as well with some coverage from what we know about guys that are coming into town and things like that. But when you look at the class of 2026, sits 23rd nationally in the rivals.com industry ranking. Really good haul here. Really good group of prospects. When you look at the top, two of the top three are offensive linemen. I love that. I love shooting your shot at wide receiver. You've got 1, 2, 3 of the top 6, I believe. 3 of the top 7 are receivers. Really good group there. Guys like Xavier Barnett, Ja'Kai Anderson, Alzur Miles. Of course, Christian Rhodes is the highest ranked guy in the class on the Rivals industry ranking. Rivals has Drew Evers as the number 1 prospect, the top 100 prospect for Rivals. I think for me, looking at this class and the positioning that SMU is in, is finding out how many jump shots you can get up at certain positions that hit from a high school perspective. Like, you go back to, and this is a different world that we're living in because money's involved in all of those things, but you go back to that Sonny Dykes recruiting class with guys like Marcus Bryant and Branson Hickman in it, for example. If my memory serves me right, that was a class of 6 offensive linemen from the high school ranks. That type of a number is going to be very hard to hit nowadays because that is a different level of recruiting. But let's say SMU wanted to try to get 6 offensive linemen because offensive linemen generally don't transfer that are good. The ones that transfer are generally the ones that haven't had a good experience or needed a fresh start or something like that. But offensive linemen now don't really transfer. The good ones, the ones that get drafted. And so you have to identify and develop offensive linemen. And because it is much harder to do that now, because let's say, for example, you're recruiting X prospect and he's picking between SMU, maybe Arkansas, maybe Tulane, maybe UCF, maybe Memphis. Well, he might go to Tulane or might go to Memphis because those programs might be the ones that make him one of their top rev share guys. That's the hard part now. So that could be your developmental diamond in the rough, Marcus Bryant of sorts, and you're not going to get him because he's going to go to Memphis and get a little bit of a bag. That's the hard part. So SMU getting the offensive linemen that they have in this class, with Papunga Katoa beating out Oklahoma, Texas A&M, all those schools, Evan Goodwin beating out Mizzou, beating out Oklahoma State, getting him, and he's been one of the most locked-in recruits that SMU has gotten in this class. And then Drew Evers, I mean, everybody knows that. LSU, Ohio State, Texas A&M, others. Really important that they shot their shot and hit at that group. And the defensive line, SMU is a good defensive line haul, in my opinion. Montre Harris, Hudson Woods, Dakota Dixon, Keith Doty, guys with quality Power 4 offers under their belt. That's where you shoot your shot. And SMU did that with this class. And at the quarterback position, Cole Leinert, not the highest rated guy. Think about if you just have a kind of middle of the road 4-star or just 4-star in general at quarterback, even one that's kind of on the fringe. But Cole is just, pretty lowly rated. And it's hard when, like, if you kind of plugged in a Malachi Zeigler to this class, I mean, you're looking at top 20. But quarterback is a position that will now, in this world of rev share and NIL and all that, be one of those where most programs will not be able to stack 5-star after 5-star after 5-star. It's just not going to happen. And that is the new way of thinking that programs are going to have to, or I should say fans are going to have to kind of realize. Like Alabama's quarterback commitment in the class of 2026 is a 3-star, 28th best quarterback in America. And then they've got Jet Tamala, who's number one player in the state of Nebraska, top 10 quarterback, but he's not Keelan Russell. He's not Jared Curtis, who's committed to Georgia. In the past, Alabama was generally able to bring in guys year after year after year that would at least be highly rated enough to be like 5-star prospects or right on the cusp. You're going to see that significant drop. And for a school like SMU, it's a little difficult as well, because when you look at what they have, and Kevin Jennings and Ty Hawkins kind of invested, that's a good number at the quarterback position to invest. And you saw that when Keldrick Luster got eventually an offer to go play for Texas State. Kind of a tough thing when there's money involved to stack at certain positions. So SMU will have to continue to invest in the offensive line spot, in the defensive line spot, tight end. They've got to continue to take their jump shots at the high school side of things there. Most guys do not go the Matt Hibner route and end up, transferring. If you think about offensive line, tight end, those are a lot of workmen, lunch pail style players and positions. If they're panning out, they're generally not messing with their happiness and their situation. It's pretty rare to see the good ones transfer left and right unless they're jumping up a level. So that's the hard part of recruiting. And look, I think SMU, if you look at this class, you could pretty much go down the list and probably say, okay, SMU, maybe slot position for receiver is the one where they didn't necessarily, hit on it. You have to kind of think at recruiting cycles almost outside of offensive line and defensive line as, all right, this class we're going to kind of load up on. Like this 2026 class is loaded with wide receivers. SMU loses Jordan Hudson. They lose Romello Brinson. Those are two big money guys that are coming off the books. And they lose Dylan Goffney, who's, lower level-ish money guy coming off the books. So then you can then go and kind of, okay, we're going to address the position and we're going to put up 4 jump shots on top flight wide receivers, 3 of the 4 being top flight wide receivers. Ty Crothers is a sleeper. That's a pretty good position to be in because of the class of 2025 that you signed when Moochie and Keyshawn and Roderick and Jake Bailey all rolled off. Pretty good group there. So in 27, I would look at receiver and I would argue, okay, SMU's probably going to take 1 or 2 receivers. And they're just going to hope that it's, they get 1 stud, maybe a sleeper. That's my off the cuff guess right now. And then in 26, you look at the running back position and you say, okay, this running back group is going to have Christian Rhodes in, assuming Christian Rhodes in, and assuming TJ Harden doesn't get another year, which at this point he's not. Then you're looking at Christian Rhodes kind of taking that spot, and you add a low kind of investment guy in Eddie Kelly. Now in 27, when Chris Johnson Jr. he'd be a junior in 26. He'd be, 27 would kind of be your year where you want that next guy in. So you'd be a 1 running back class. So you've kind of got to watch kind of how they stack these positions, and different recruiting positions will be very different as far as how they address them. So recruiting is a different world. You want to consistently be a top 25 high school recruiting class. You want to see a spike, and then you kind of expect, okay, maybe a top 20, top 25 class. 27, SMU has a chance to do it and make it a top 15 class. That's my opinion. They have an opportunity to do that. We'll see how it all plays out, but they're off to a really good start with Malachi Zeigler. We'll break down 27 and kind of look ahead over the next couple of weeks on the recruiting show, but expect the recruiting pod to come out on Mondays, kind of by lunch, And then you guys will be able to listen to that and get through the early part of your week before we get to the breakdowns with Hayden and Bill Armstrong and all of those things. So really appreciate our friends at Horn Legend for stepping up. Do, of course, want to mention Northwest Insurance Agency, Status Jet, Thomas Auto Group, as well as our friends at AKM Turf and Greens. Get $500 off your project today when you go to akmturfandgreens.com. We appreciate Alex Carpenter and his team for hooking up some subscribers, listeners with great backyards. So shout out to AKM Turf and Greens. And this has been the On the Pony Express podcast presented by Northwest Insurance Agency and Horn Legend. Go to hornlegend.com, get polos like this and free shipping with code PONY. I'm Billy Embody. Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll catch you next time.
Thanks for listening to the On the Pony Express podcast with Billy Embody. Follow us on your socials on X at SMU3 and on Instagram at On3SMU. And keep it locked to OnThePonyExpress.com for more coverage.